Being a SUFF means being willing to take risks even when you're afraid.
I first got involved almost 10 years ago to the day by our amazing co-lead producer, Rachel Sussman, who had this idea about a musical about the women's suffrage movement since she was a little girl.
I read a paragraph on suffrage, which is all the textbook would cover in my US history class, and I felt like there had to be more to it. Years later, I got to know Shaina Taub, and I started to think, why isn't this a piece of theater? And is Shaina the person who should write this?
And she handed me the book Jailed for Freedom by Doris Stevens, and I stayed up all night reading it, and it just blew my mind. I could not believe I had never learned about these women and what they did. And I emailed her at 4 a.m. saying, yes, we have to do it.
It actually takes a community. It takes an ensemble. It takes everyone to make something happen, to make musical theater happen, to make progress happen.
It's so gratifying to just be in a group of women who love to work really hard and kind of get high off that and find our joy from that sense of like trying to take something really difficult and crack it together.
I saw the rigor with which Shaina was approaching her work and her humility, and also, not for nothing, her ability to want to rewrite, to be frustrated, to look for more, to dig deeper, to have really complicated conversations about what we were saying and how we were saying it.
We actually got to see the show realized at the public, and we learned a lot from it. And I think that we've just continued to shape the project and make it stronger and more relatable and more human.
Shaina Taub's music, it is so incredible. It is irresistible. These women had a lot to say, and saying it through song. It's anthemic and it's emotional, and we get to really capture their passion, and the music gets to go straight to your heart and grab it and hold it there.
It is such a joy. It's gonna change history. It really is.
I remember seeing this show at the Public Theater in 2022, and I fell in love with it. I knew that this was such an important show that needed to be seen by many more people.
One of like our most exciting up-and-coming composers is finally on Broadway where she belongs.
It's wonderful to get a new type of story that focuses on a key aspect of women's history in this country.
It's so relevant and so entertaining, which is like, when those worlds come together, it's a perfection.
I get so hopeful when I both go to see and think about what Shaina has created. It's an original American musical. There aren't many of those.
I want people to head out of the theater feeling amazed at what these women were capable of a century ago, and feeling inspired about what they could do now. And you know, at the end of this story, it becomes so clear that this fight is not won. What if the SUFFS could turn out 100 years ago and see us here in 2024? What message would they leave us with? The song says, your ancestors are all the proof you need that progress is possible, not guaranteed. It will only be made if we keep marching on.
Come on, keep marching, marching, marching. 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 Keep marching on.
SUFFS is about a group of amazing, fierce women who won the right to vote.
It's really about what it is to fight for change.
And it's like watching your best friends. There's conflict, but it's born out of love.
It's beautiful and motivating and inspirational.
It's also really fun, in addition to having some seriously good music.
Yes, it is a period piece, but it's so current.
In this particular moment, it feels so urgent given women's rights are under attack.
This show is existing for the people of today to remind us we are the people that we're fighting for. This show gives me hope.
If you want to see the sexiest, most talented group of women you've ever seen on a Broadway stage, come to SUFFS.
The show is about these women, but it's about all of us. It's the true American story. It's about women's struggle in the U.S., to get the right to vote, but it is relevant in every community for all women.
It's wonderful to get a new type of story that focuses on a key aspect of women's history in this country.
This is about how you make change, how strong women came together to find a path forward.
One of our most exciting up-and-coming composers is finally on Broadway where she belongs.
Shaina is a genius and I will follow her anywhere. Being with the cast, just getting to sing these songs together and celebrate each other is the biggest joy.
It's fun and it's sexy and the songs are memorable.
I hope they feel uplifted. I hope they feel inspired. I hope they feel encouraged. The number of women who said they want to come back with their daughters, they want to bring their sister. Some people are like, oh, my son to see this. It's really striking a nerve with people in a really wonderful way.
We loved and loved SUFFS. When I say loved it, I cried, I laughed. She did.
I love new musicals. I can go out and yell it at the top of my lungs or sing it at the top of my lungs.
I thought it was so funny. It's really, really funny. It's super entertaining. The music's phenomenal, and it was really emotional.
That's so exciting when you can make real stories come alive in a way that makes everyone want to learn more.
I thought Broadway couldn't get any better, and it did.
It was incredible. It was empowering.
It feels instantly classic.
Just seeing so much joy and laughter and power on the stage.
Everything about it is very new and unique from what else is on Broadway right now.
There's humor, there's sadness, the acting was incredible. Everything you're looking for in a musical is there.
I think one of the most incredible and unique things about the show is that Shaina wrote it and is also starring in it.
Such an inspirational message that Shaina wrote to the show that I'm going to carry with me for forever.
It is exactly what we need to press forward, to make those brand new stories, to tell stories that aren't being told.
I can see the show being performed for generations, for years.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us here tonight. My name is Stephanie Street, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Clinton Foundation. And we are so thrilled to celebrate Women's History Month here at the Arkansas Repertory Theater tonight. It's just wonderful to be in this incredible space. Our program tonight is part of what we call the Clinton Presidential Center Presents, which is a partnership between the Clinton Foundation, the Clinton School of Public Service, and the Clinton Presidential Library. I want to say a special thank you to our Clinton Center members and supporters, many of whom are in the audience tonight. Because of your incredible ongoing support, we are able to have programs like this for our community. It means so much. I'm thrilled to welcome some of the remarkable talent from the critically acclaimed Tony Award-winning musical SUFFS in Little Rock. That's a pretty big deal, don't you think? Yes. SUFFS is about the brilliant, passionate, and funny American women who fought tirelessly for the right to vote. It underscores the tale of women's rights, voting rights, racism, sexism, political expediency, and moral obligation. It is about how citizens can work to make change and why protest is patriotic. So we have some very, very special guests here tonight. Tsilala Brock is an actor and writer who recently made her Broadway debut in SUFFS as Dudley Malone. She is a proud Bermudian American storyteller. We also have Shaina Taub, who is a two-time Tony Award-winning and Grammy-nominated songwriter and performer. She starred as Alice Paul in the Broadway production of SUFFS, for which she won Tony Awards for Best Book and Best Score, Outer Critics Circle Awards, and a Drama Desk Award. She received a Grammy nomination for Best Musical Theater Album for the cast of SUFFS. That's pretty impressive. Don't you agree? And we have Secretary Hillary Rodham Clinton, who has spent more than 5 decades in public service as an advocate, attorney, First Lady of Arkansas, U.S. Senator, U.S. Secretary of State, and presidential candidate. Empowering women and girls is a theme that runs throughout her life and legacy. And in addition to that distinguished career, she is a producer of SUFFS, which is really a continuation of her work, securing and protecting the rights of women and girls. As she says, it's really the unfinished business of the 21st century. And our moderator tonight is the executive director of the Arkansas Rep, who really needs no introduction here, Will Trice, who is a Tony Award winner himself. And we are so fortunate that Will decided to come back to Arkansas to strengthen Little Rock's vibrant arts and culture scenes. Now, if you will please silence your cell phones and join me in welcoming our distinguished panelists. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Arkansas Repertory Theater. Hello out there in America. We are the state's flagship professional nonprofit theater, and we are about to embark next year on our 50th anniversary. And very excited to have our community partners, the Clinton Center, here with us tonight, and for all of you to be here in our space doing what we do in theater spaces, whether it's through an entertaining story, or through a moving piece of music, or through conversation just like this. We're sitting next to our neighbors, we're sharing experiences and ideas, and we just might come out the other end more empathetic neighbors and better citizens. Some of you may be unaware that one of our distinguished panelists is actually a veteran of the rep stage. Yes, Secretary Clinton gave a star turn in our 2022 production of Into the Woods in the role of the giant. I hope you did not let the fame of that experience go to your head. You are welcome back here anytime. She was a real pro. She did that voiceover in one take, y'all. Like, she was not playing around. But we're here to talk about another amazing musical, SUFFS. All 3 of you made your Broadway debuts with this production. Shaina, you won 2 Tony Awards for your work in this production. Congratulations. And I mean, you wrote the music, you wrote the lyrics, you wrote the book. You were obviously the creative force behind this work. Tell me, where did the original idea originate from?
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here in Arkansas for the first time. Thanks for having me. Truly. In 2014, one of our other distinguished producers, Rachel Sussman, we were kind of acquaintances from college. I didn't know her that well. She asked me out for coffee. She sat me down. She's like, I have an idea for a musical. What do you know about the American women's suffrage movement? And I was 25 at the time, and I was sort of embarrassed to realize that I really didn't know that much. I was sheepishly, I was like, Susan B. Anthony is on a coin, and there was like a convention in upstate 19, but I sort of just realized in that moment, oh my God, I don't know. And she handed me a book that I highly recommend if you haven't read. It's called Jailed for Freedom, which is this riveting firsthand account by a woman, a real woman wrote it, obviously, a suffragist named Doris Stevens, who ultimately became one of the characters in the show. And it's an account of specifically the White House picket protest in 1917. And I just stayed up all night reading it. And I could not believe that I had gone through the American public school system hungry for a story like this, searching, looking. I wanted to write a story about a group of girls taking on a system. I was taking the Robin Hood myth and gender flipping it. I was looking for a story like this. And I was like, oh my God, this was in my own backyard this whole time, and it is yet to be majorly dramatized in American media. So I just emailed her at 4 a.m. and I was like, we have to do it. And 10 years later, we opened on Broadway.
I love it. Yeah, 10 years. That's how long it takes. Secretary Clinton, so much of your work for the past decades have been about preserving history, promoting stories about women. Big fan of your series with Chelsea. Yes. Prior to being involved with the show, what was your experience with this topic, with this history? When were you first exposed to it? How did your interest in it develop over time?
Well, first, Will, I have to say it is such a thrill for me to be here at the Rep on this stage with all of you, but particularly with you. I don't want to embarrass Will, but Will and Chelsea are longtime friends, and I just think of those years, so many years ago, and then when you moved to New York and became friends, obviously, with Chelsea's husband Mark, and then came back to Arkansas. So I have to say thank you. Thank you for everything you're doing here at the Rep and what it means to Arkansas. It really is wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you.
I didn't learn hardly anything about the suffrage movement in America when I was actually going to school. It was very much, as Shaina said, I didn't really learn very much about any woman when I was going to school. I sort of vaguely remember maybe Joan of Arc or Queen Elizabeth I, Cleopatra. I mean, it wasn't a very big group, and it was certainly not part of American history. So for me, it was much later after, certainly I graduated from college, law school, I started reading, and I would read things and learn more, and I learned about the first women's conference that demanded equality, and it was in upstate New York in a place called Seneca Falls in 1848, and about 300, mostly women, but also some really stalwart men like Frederick Douglass, gathered together and issued something called the Declaration of Sentiments. And it was the first time in any organized way that any group anywhere in the world had put forth a quite comprehensive platform about the rights that women should enjoy. And so I began to learn a lot more. And of course, the people whose names were at the forefront of that were people that I paid attention to. But then it was also a lot later that I learned about this final push to get the 19th Amendment passed. And so again, I knew something. I knew that the first real march for anything in America was the Women's March for Suffrage. And so I was interested, and then when Shaina and her wonderful producers and her great cast first previewed SUFFS. It was at the Public Theater in New York City, and I went to see it, and I loved it. I loved the fact that it was about our history and a piece of our history that people didn't know enough about but should know more about. And I was so excited to encourage and really support Shaina and her team, and then out of the blue, I get a letter from her which asked me if I wanted to be a co-producer of SUFFS. Well, I was thrilled to be really clear. It was so exciting, but I had no idea what a co-producer did. And so I told her that, I don't know what you do as a co-producer, but if I can be helpful, I will love to be helpful. And then Shaina was so great because she sent me a video of some of the new songs she had written. She'd been working really hard at, kind of tweaking the story, changing scenes around, eliminating some songs, writing more songs. And I got to see from afar that creative process at work. And then she was nice enough to invite me to be part of some of the rehearsals that were happening. She invited me to something called a Zitz probe, which I had never heard of. And apparently it's a German word where the cast sings for the first time with an orchestra. So I went to that. It was thrilling. I got to sit in the rehearsal room and watch these amazing actresses and singers just like take the score and just soar with it. And it was so exciting to see how Shaina had transformed what I saw at the Public Theater into what I was seeing in the transformation on its way to Broadway. And I just, could not have been more grateful to have a front row seat. And then, of course, going to the opening and being able to recommend it to everybody that I could find, and seeing the audiences grow and the excitement and the enthusiasm and the young women and girls who were coming. So it was an absolute, peak experience for me. I loved it, and I admire what you did and how you did it, and this passionate, talented cast that you had. Every time I saw anyone in this cast, they were as excited as you were about what they were able to convey and to help people see and understand. And boy, was it timely to have the story of how we fought for and gained the right to vote at a time of so much, change and challenge. So it was a wonderful experience.
Tsilala, you portrayed one of the few male characters in the production, Dudley Malone, and I'd love to just tell us a little bit about Dudley, and also, were you aware of him prior to being involved with the show? What was your experience with the SUFFS story in school or before this?
No, I had no idea about Dudley Malone. I knew sort of the same as Shaina. I knew about Susan B. Anthony. I knew about Seneca Falls, sort of in the distance somewhere. And then I got a call back for Dudley and talked to my mom about it. And I was like, I'm doing this thing, and it's a man, and I don't know. And I said Dudley Malone, and she's a lawyer. And she said, oh, I do know about him because lawyers study him because he was part of the Scopes Monkey trial, which is one of the first viral trials before any sort of machine media, but first viral trials to, can you help me out here, please, Secretary Clinton?
Well, it was a really well-known trial because it was covered, in those days, obviously by newspapers.
Right.
This was, in a long time ago, but it was the Scopes Monkey trial, the trial about evolution.
That's right, and about how to teach evolution to kids. So it was a teacher who was trying to teach evolution, and the government pushed back, and Dudley Malone was on the side of this teacher and had apparently an incredible speech that gets quoted from time to time. So that's really all I knew. And when I did that callback, the casting director called me and said, I just want you to get some insight that this character is very earnest and very heartfelt and rough around the edges, but does his best. And for me, I just loved the idea of my body playing that character. My body playing someone earnest, someone who, he also had the romantic arc in the show, so could be seen as someone able to be fallen in love with, and that even throughout his history, like, may not always succeed, but will try his best to leave a legacy and where he's on the right side of history.
That's great. And Shaina, that leads me back to you. And you know, any musical they're famously hard to create, and every single decision is just painstaking. And but you're dealing with historical material. You're dealing with so much historical material, so many figures that you could choose to dive into and flesh out more. What was your approach to that in terms of like the events, the people, of kind of what to include as you were shaping this?
Absolutely. I mean, as from that night that I was so obsessed with Jail for Freedom, I just went on a suffrage bender. I was like researching every book. My entire small one-bedroom apartment is 95% suffrage books. But the single biggest challenge as a dramatist was distillation, because there's so much, and it has, like I was saying before, has not been majorly dramatized. I think often with other historical pieces, just to give an example, Hamilton, which I love as much as everyone does, is amazing. Most of us are familiar when we walk into Hamilton with George Washington, with Thomas Jefferson. So when we see Hamilton is flipping a script that we've all grown up reading, and that's the thrill and the genius of Hamilton. For me, when Alice Paul walks on a stage, for the majority of my audience, no one knows who she is. When Inez Milholland, Carrie Chapman Catt, Ida B. Wells, some folks might, but I was realizing that I would be introducing a lot of people to these folks. So it was always this challenge of, how can I always prioritize humanity over history? How can I really foreground their emotional lives over facts and figures and details? So I had to put aside my own passion and love for the historical detail and try and think, what is the least amount of expositional information I can give an audience so they can get on this ride dramatically? And what are the moments that I can show that you can't find in the history books? That was and it took me years and drafts to come to this. This was not something I sat down realizing. What was Alice Paul thinking at 3 a.m. when she couldn't sleep and she was pacing around her office trying to resist the urge to have a cigarette? What was going through her mind? I wasn't gonna find that in the book, and that's what theater can do. What I realized is, a museum exhibit, which is also essential to culture, is beholden to sort of accuracy, facts and figures. Maybe a statue might be inherently celebratory, or it's stone, but in the theater, we can humanize people. So it was always, how can I really imagine these women's full emotional lives over the sort of facts and figures of history? And then, I could talk about this all day, but one other point is I really wanted to show, among many things, one was that a social movement is a messy web of a lot of people working together, yes, across all differences, and it's a group. It's why I didn't call the show Alice, or it's called SUFFS, it's about the group. And yet, dramatic structure in a play, or Western dramatic structure, there's lots of different schools of thought, really emphasizes a protagonist. So it was, how did I make, and I wanted to make a satisfying piece of American drama that people would respond to. So how could I both include the messy big web of people and include as many characters as I could, the way that my favorite historical musicals like Ragtime do. And yeah, Ragtime, the greatest. Ragtime is my yes, clap for Ragtime. She knows, are these our park rangers? Oh my God, we got the most, I'm sorry to call you, we got the most incredible tour at Central High, the historic site. Thank you for that beautiful tour. We have some park rangers
Thank you so
right here.
much. Hi.
Thank you.
Class of 97.
Yes. So yeah, it was always those challenges, those tensions. How do I include a lot of people while also having a satisfying dramatic structure, and how can I prioritize emotion over information?
Well, and a follow-up to that, I've got some great audience questions here, and one is related, which is, how do you then approach poetic license versus historical accuracy and facts?
It's a great question. I really, over time, had to give myself permission to invent. I think I felt a sense of responsibility to these women that was both helpful and unhelpful, right? Because there was a reverence that I have for them and continue to have, that I needed to also check at the door as a writer and allow myself to make things up. As I was saying earlier, we don't know what Alice or Ida or Inez was really thinking. So I, in this one show, have to imagine it. And then there are there's 1,000 little decisions, like, one example, Alice Paul and Lucy Burns, two of my main characters, had a lot of experience in the British suffrage movement before they came to America to bring a lot of these protest tactics to the US. And they had already gone to prison in the UK and had already gone on hunger strikes, but I got rid of that because for me, in a play, I find it's often most useful dramatically when a character is experiencing something for the first time. So if I'm going to tell this whole story where these women are in prison going on hunger strikes, if my main character has already gone through that, it's not as exciting. So that's like just an example of like, even though that was against the history, it served. I had to learn to embrace the fact that Alice Paul in SUFFS the musical is not Alice Paul from history. It's a character. Yeah.
That's great. I think we would all love to get a taste of your work. Tsilala, Shaina, would you perform a song for us from the show?
Will do, can do.
Yeah. Why don't we'll get situated over there and then I'll set it up a little bit. Does that sound good?
Do, yeah.
Okay, yes. Give it up for Will moderating this.
Go, Will. Doing amazing.
I've got cards. This is like,
So while they're getting set up, I just want to say two quick things that adds to what both of them said. First of all, Doris Stevens, who wrote the book that got Shaina interested in the first place, Jailed for Freedom, ended up marrying Dudley Malone
she's my wife.
in real life.
Yes.
In real life.
Can you believe it?
And so it's like an amazing story that you can barely believe. The second thing is the way that Shaina creates the tension between the people who have been in the struggle for decades and the people who show up and say, why haven't you gotten this done? And get out of the way, it's our turn. Is so well done. And it's like a story of progress. There are always those conflicts. And the way that she captured that and the way she's used the characters. And it was fascinating because a lot of people who saw it would say to me, wow, I have a better understanding about how hard political change is. And so the people who'd been at it, like Carrie Chapman Catt, she was determined to do what she thought would work, and Alice Paul saying no, but at the end, it was both the older and the younger approaches that merged to actually get it done.
Absolutely, absolutely. And speaking of that and different approaches, this song, y'all are in for a treat because, as we've said, Tsilala in SUFFS played Dudley Malone beautifully. Tonight, she's actually going to sing a song that she did not sing in the show. We were so excited about this trip. I was like, what do you want to sing? And she was like, what if I sing Wait My Turn, Ida B. Wells' song? And I was like, hell yeah, you can do anything. You're Tsilala Brock. So just to set up this song a bit, one of the first big dramatic events is the show, and just the disclaimers that as I sort of set this up, like I was saying before, this is the version from SUFFS. It's like my own unique amalgamation of the historical events, even though the historical events are even more nuanced and complex and thorough than our 2.5-hour show can be. But Alice and her crew are planning. Oh, I'm so sorry. Hello. Yes. Oh, this is so wonderful. Sorry, I just saw you. What a treat. Give it up for the interpreter. Wonderful. They are planning this march that, as Secretary Clinton was saying, was the first mass mobilization of American citizens down Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington. They're planning this giant women's march. And to make a very long story short, they're planning it in D.C., and they have invited women from all over the country, from all backgrounds, to participate. But the central organizing team is a group of white women. And they receive feedback from some of the southern chapters of suffrage organizations saying that they're going to pull their funding if women of color are invited to march. And so, yeah. I mean, there's a lot to say, but it was really important to me to be honest about the racism within white women in this movement that we still, of course, see today. And I think it's something we need to really confront. And also, it's well, we'll talk about it more after. But anyway, just setting up the song, getting there. Sorry, thanks, Tsilala, for waiting. They decide, well, we don't want to. We have a good social conscience. We would never exclude Black women marching, but we're going to ask them to march in back, which of course is a racist, segregationist compromise, and we know this. And so in this next song, I imagine an encounter, speaking of poetic license, between Alice and Ida B. Wells. Ida B. Wells, who is just a legendary journalist, anti-lynching activist. I mean, she deserves an entire whole musical of her own and a 9-season HBO prestige series about Ida B. Wells.
Let's get it done.
Yeah. And she, in this imagined encounter, she comes to the office and says, and she's come to march with her own state delegation from Illinois in this march. And she says, why have I been told to march in back? And Alice and the group kind of like fall over themselves to try to explain it to her and say, all due respect, but we don't have a choice. Without the Southern women's support, there might be no march at all. And, you know, Mrs. Wells, I think we all must do whatever it takes for the march to go on, even if that means waiting your turn. And this is what I imagine Ida's response might be.
Wait my turn. When will you white women ever learn? I had the same old talk with Carrie Chapman 20 years ago. I thought you might be better, but you still don't know. You want me to wait my turn, to simply put my sex before my race. Why don't I leave my skin at home and powder up my face? Guess who always waits her turn, who always ends up in the back? Us lucky ones born both female and black. Wait my turn. Well, I sure don't see you waiting yours. No, you're preaching, we demand it now, while knocking down locked doors. But you want me to wait my turn, so you don't offend your Southern base. Since when does a radical roll over for bigots in the first place? That's not leadership, Alice, it's cowardice. I hear you quote Frederick Douglass on your soapbox, intending to include and impress us. But in the press, you play down our involvement, and behind closed doors, you intend to suppress us. Deeds, not words, is the button on your jacket. I'm so sick of rhetoric with no action to back it. If you don't have the spine to stand with us now, what will it take? You do have a choice, there's always a choice. Which one will you make? Don't you dare tell me to wait my turn. In truth, it's not your call. Either I march with my own state delegates, or I don't march at all. I'm not here to soothe your guilt. That is none of my concern. I won't beg for your approval, which I shouldn't have to earn. So no matter what they tell you, I will not wait one more minute for my turn.
Tsilala Brock, everyone.
Thank you all so much.
I've never sang that before. That was so cool. But it is a testament to the writing that Shaina has, because to have a chance to sing it and say all of those things that is so nuanced is extremely powerful, especially because for the last year I played a very earnest white man. So I'm thankful for the opportunity to also put such a legend's imagined voice in my body. So thank you.
Let's give it up for Tsilala, everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many memorable lines in this show, and the show in general, it speaks not just to the specific suffrage movement, but also women's rights in general, civil rights, LGBTQ rights, you name it. There's one line in it, a poignant question that's asked near the beginning, which is, how can we do it if it's never been done? And I think the same could be said for this show, this production. because I think we have all seen that stories that center women very often get overlooked. And Secretary Clinton, I wonder if you could maybe speak to why you think that is and what the heck can we do about it?
How do you do it if it's never been done? It's hard. I think, it's been a very, very important contribution to American history and musical theater that this show has been both conceived and produced and kind of given to us, because it does tell an important part of who we are, warts and all, and how we had to keep going to realize just fundamental equal rights under our Constitution. And the women who were in the midst of that over so many years, it had never been done before. And they knew it had never been done before. And they tried every way they could imagine to convince the people who held the power, which were the political and business leaders of America at the time, the white men who ran our country and ran our economy, that it was something that would make us stronger, make us fairer, make us, closer to our more perfect union. But it took so long. And it's an incredible tribute to everybody who didn't give up despite how hard it was. And the way that Shaina imagined Ida B. Wells was so impactful because it did come right out of the history, although of course there had to be poetic license. I mean, Ida B. Wells did show up at the march, and she did refuse to march in the back. And Inez Mulholland was on a white horse. And so the way that, these historic facts are used to tell a much broader story than even what you see in the play over the 2.5 hours, it reminds us of how hard progress can be and how there is in politics no permanent victories or defeat. And part of what we are seeing today is a big pushback on, as you just said, Will, the civil rights movement, the women's movement, the LGBTQ rights movement, all rights that had to be seized by people over decades of effort at great cost and loss of life and terrible sacrifice. But there are always forces at work that want to turn the clock back. And it's important to recognize that you have to have people who are able to envision a different future and then really work as hard as they can and then pass off the baton to whoever comes next to keep working toward it. And sometimes there is pushback, and then you have to regroup and you have to go forward again. So I loved it for many, many reasons, but I loved it because it reminded us of how hard it is to go up against the status quo, no matter what the status quo is, and against forces that, for all their different reasons, which I frankly find hard to understand, but accept as reality, that they want to halt forward progress and reverse rights. And that certainly is a relevant message for today.
May I add to that?
Tsilala, are we going to say something?
Yes, can I just add to this? Because that's also my favorite part of this show and of this writing, is that the progress that we see with these women took way longer than the history books allow us to know, right? They stood outside of the White House for seasons. It was actually a viral moment where people knew about it enough that they would travel to Washington to see these women stand outside of the White House. So not only is it cool that this was the first protest outside of the White House, not first female protest, but just humans in general, but also that it took so long, or the story about Black women standing in the back of the march. That is what they were asked to do, and that's something that we should all confront about a truth of our history. But the other part is that they didn't end up in the back. They did end up, because of not stopping. Mary Church Terrell and a bunch of other suffragists and allies emailed, that's not right, wrote letters throughout the night up until the morning of the march, so that I'm a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, and then the second historically Black Greek sorority, Delta Sigma Theta, their first public event once they were incorporated was this march. And the Mary Church Terrell argued in these letters for them to not be in the back with a race, but with the group of students, the same way that Ida wanted to be with her delegates. And so for me, in the micro and the macro, I learned from this, and the beauty of art is it reminds you, it's a reflection of what we might forget, which is that progress takes so much longer. You think about the boycott and the bus boycott. That's way longer than I learned about it. It just took way more months than my head recognizes. And so I think just on an educational point of view, especially in not even just where we are now or where we were 10 years ago or where we'll be in the future, but just to remember in every present day as we continue to work for progress that it takes all of us, and it is actually about self-care so that you can be consistent in continuing on. And that's what I learned from SUFFS. How cool.
I love that. Yes. Shaina, you mentioned you started working on this show 10 years ago, and when you started, I'm sure you had no conception that when it would actually appear on Broadway would be an election year with the second woman at the top of the ticket in history, co-produced by the first woman to appear at the top of the ticket. And so, all art exists in conversation with the moment in which it's received. How do you think the events of last year and that election impacted the way that the show developed in its later stages and the way it was received by audiences?
Well, for so many things to say. How much time do we have? But first,
That's how much time.
I know. All right, going down. But I just have to acknowledge so many of the inspiring things my friends over here have said. This is what theater can do. I grew up as a girl, as I was saying, not learning this story. And why is that? Why are we not teaching these stories to our young people enough? And I think it's systems of power in this country often would prefer that a girl grow up never watching a play about her own history, because they know if she does, she'll want to write the next chapter for herself. They'll know that she's, if I had what I wanted to try and write the kind of show that if I had as a girl would have made me feel like something was possible. This is why I think governments who want to roll these rights back go for language. They go for the arts. They go there first because they know how powerful it is. They know that when citizens gather in a room much like this one and share ideas and talk honestly and reckon with our past and the possibility of collaboration, that we get ideas about how powerful we can be as people, and they don't like that. But that's, I think we need champions of the arts and leaders like Secretary Clinton, who has always been a champion for arts education and arts funding in this country. Because what I've so appreciated in getting to being admiring Secretary Clinton from afar for so many years, but having the joy and privilege of collaborating with her, is she, as a global leader, understands the essential nature of arts to a culture, and I just am so grateful for that. And you were asking about it last year. Okay, a couple things to say. One, I did try with SUFFS, even though I began writing it in 2014. We finished writing it last year. Quite a few things happened in between. And I I really strove to create a show that was not contingent on any one particular American moment. I really tried, and only time will tell how well I did or didn't do, but to not attach it self-consciously to the events of 2016, the events of 2020, everything in between. I purposely never mention a political party. And because I didn't want the show to get pulled into any one moment. Because for me, the best pieces of American musical theater, the time is always right for them, and they speak to whatever moment they're in. I'm thinking of shows like Cabaret, right? Of Fiddler on the Roof, of Ragtime. Every time those shows are done, everyone's walking out of the theater being like, the time could not be more perfect for this, or like, it feels like it was written yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So I tried to create a container in the theater that, especially going into 2024, my final revisions, we knew it was an election year. We didn't know how it would turn out. No one did. Even people claim to. You don't know how something's going to turn out. We are all, and in the unknowing, there's possibility for us to change the result for the better, and that to me is the definition of hope that I prefer. But anyway, I wanted to create something that folks could come to the theater in the run-up and the aftermath of that election, no matter what happened, and have a place to grieve together, to celebrate together, and everything in between, because that's what the theater is. We're not all alone on our phones at home right now. We are here in what I like to think of as a civic temple. We get to come, and it's democracy in action, right? It requires participation. A theater requires us here, and you nodding, and us having a moment. We're strangers. Isn't that cool? So yeah, and as my friends were saying, part of my thesis of SUFFS is the perpetual incompletion of any social or political victory, that these fights are never won, that we have come so far and we have so far to go, and that contradictory truth is always the case, and you have to hold both things in your hands. So it's why I didn't end the show with the 19th Amendment passed and hooray, is because it's not that we can't, we need to be able to both celebrate how far we've come and recognize how far we have to go. And that's what I hoped to offer, yeah.
Did this experience with SUFFS and bringing them more into your life, you were portraying this story 8 times a week on Broadway, you were immersing yourself in this history, you were really devoting yourself to it. Did that change the way you experienced this past year?
Yes. I think the best part was we got to really interrogate where we've been, and we got to do it together. And so no matter what outcome happened outside of the 4 walls of the music box, inside we were offering to each audience member lessons from our past. And so together, our SUFFS are a mighty fine group of people. We strive for excellence, we really do, from the creative team to the backstage, our crew hands, everyone really strives for excellence, and we really, that week, it was quite tough, but backstage, we had each other's back. And for me, that is in the same way that you're saying this is a third space that cannot be taken for granted because it is democracy in essence. That sense of community, this was my Broadway debut, it really, I think I'll go forward advocating for that kind of community in any space because of how we were able to. I mean, it's like we walked through fire. So, yes, I am completely shifted by it and changed, and it's in my molecules now. And to be able to hold the extreme joys and the tears all at the same time with people who want what's best for you and expect the best from you is a very high frequency. It's just really up there. And so, yeah, it was an amazing year. I'm so thankful for it.
Well, guys, we are Thank you. And we are unfortunately approaching the end of this event, but I do, as President Clinton and Secretary Clinton like to do when they host a conversation, I would love to wrap this one up with a question for all of you, which is, and we'll start with you, Secretary Clinton, what is giving you hope right now?
Well, I think being here together and talking about the struggles of American history, and as Shaina said, how far we've come and how far we have yet to go, I believe is a very motivating thought. And within it is the hope that this wonderful, flawed, but resilient country of ours will never quit trying to do better and do what's right and be committed to our values and that concept of a more perfect union despite the bumps in the road and the challenges that we are experiencing. And, you know, I see hope as a feeling that is very both comforting and motivating. It's not a strategy, but it can get you up and keep you going. And it's a choice. You can choose to be hopeful and optimistic in the darkest times, whether those times are dark personally or in your community or your country or the world. And I think it's the choice that makes for a more satisfying, meaningful, purposeful life. So I am well aware of the difficulties we're going through, but I also am well aware of the difficulties our country and our citizens have gone through over and over and over again in the past. And the suffering, but the optimism that motivated people to keep believing that something could be changed, that it could be better. And I think that's what we should take away from SUFFS and what we should remind ourselves of. And what you said about how that community that you created in this play with everybody involved, from the cast to the backstage to everyone, we need community more than ever, because it's hard to be alone screaming at your television or throwing your phone because another outrage has happened. And so you need community where people can say, okay, you're not in this alone. We are in this together, and we're going to get through it. And if we stick together, we're going to actually come out of it stronger. So that's why I remain, both optimistic and hopeful, but that's not a strategy. You have to put the work in, you have to form the community, you have to keep standing up and fighting back.
Thank you. Well, before we wrap up with one more very special performance, one thing that is giving me hope is that SUFFS is going out on a national tour beginning this fall. It has also been filmed for great performances on PBS. Shane, is there anything you can tell us about that? Or
This was always, our Broadway run was such a thrill. It's always been my end goal for the show to go around the country, and for eventually also for schools and communities to get to put it on for themselves. You know what I mean? Because Broadway, while it's a beautiful, amazing thing that we got to do, it's largely inaccessible to most of the girls and kids that want to hear the story. The price for a Broadway ticket, it's just the nature of the business. It's not accessible to most families. And so I'm just so excited for schools and communities to get to put on the show for themselves and to get to watch it on public access television, because it's a story that really should belong to everyone.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
And can we hear one more song from the show?
Yes.
And be sure to listen to the words of the song, because it is a follow-up to what we were just talking about.
So this was the finale of the show. it's called Keep Marching, and in it, in the theater, we talk about the fourth wall, right? We're kind of all getting to like watch this drama unfold, and I imagined in this finale what would happen when the SUFFS, that fourth wall, disappears, and the SUFFS a century ago can see us here in 2025 or whatever year the show is being performed. Imagining what would they say to us? What could they offer to us in this moment? And so I offer it to you tonight.
You won't live to see the future that you fight for. Maybe no one gets to reach that perfect day. If the work is never over, then how do you keep marching anyway? Do you carry your banner as far as you can, rewriting the world with your imperfect pen, till the next stubborn girl picks it up in a picket line over and over again, and you join in the chorus of centuries chanting to her? The path will be twisted and risky and slow, but keep marching, keep marching. Will you fail or prevail? Well, you may never know, but keep marching, 'cause your ancestors are all the proof you need that progress is possible, not guaranteed. It will only be made if we keep marching on. Keep marching on. Keep marching on. And remember every mother that you came from. Learn as much from our success as our mistakes. Don't forget you're merely one of many others on the journey every generation makes. We did not end in justice, and neither will you, but still we made strides, so we know you can too. Make peace with our incomplete power and use it for good, 'cause there's so much to do. The gains will feel small and the loss is too large. Keep marching, keep marching. You'll rarely agree with whoever's in charge. Keep marching, 'cause your ancestors are all the proof you need that progress is possible, not guaranteed. It will only be made if we keep marching on. Keep marching on. Yes, the world can be changed. We've done it before, so keep marching, keep marching. We're always behind you, so bang down the door and keep marching, and let history sound the alarm of how the future demands that we fight for it now. It will only be ours if we keep marching on. Come on, keep marching, 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 keep marching on.
Thank you so much.
How about that? Shaina Taub, everyone. Thank you so much, Shaina. Tsilala Brock, Secretary Hillary Rodham Clinton. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm Will Trice. Thank you for coming to the Arkansas Repertory Theater. Please come back, come see a show, come have conversation, and keep marching. Thank you very much.
If you want my love,
for the man. Too much for the man. He couldn't make it. So he's leaving the life he's come to know. Ooh. He said he's going. He said he's going back to find. Going back to find. Ooh, what's left of his world. The world he left behind. Not so long ago. He's leaving. On that midnight train to Georgia.